This is Wretched Radio with Todd Friel.
Please do not hear me taking shots at or endorsing Donald Trump. This is Wretched Radio. A number of stories have appeared within the last several days thanks to Stormy Davis. She is an adult film star. What's her name?
Daniels.
That's the one, too, right there. Stormy Daniels, right there.
Charlie Daniels.
That'll help me to remember this. 2006, presumably, she had an affair with the President of the United States. I know he wasn't the president then. His wife had just given birth, apparently, to their son, Barron. Donald Trump is accused of doing that. It is believed that she was given $130,000 to not talk about it, but lo and behold, she is. Not much to see here, in my estimation, except for the fact that many evangelicals are now defending Donald Trump. And they're saying it's because it was before he was the president of the United States. And so even though people are saying, well, why were you all over Bill Clinton when he did something like this, but you're not all over Donald Trump? And the response is, well, one was in the White House, the other one wasn't. Nevertheless, a number of articles that are being written. Juan Williams has written an article. Juan Williams, by the way, who was absolutely shocked when on Fox News he was being interviewed along with Robert Jeffress. That was Robert Jeffress. That was Robert Jeffress and Juan Williams. Juan Williams was shocked when Robert Jeffress said it just doesn't matter that he did this. It's not going to change evangelicals' opinion about the man because we're all in for the policies. Now, let's just for a moment, assume that everything Robert Jeffress said is correct. Mike Huckabee defending the president, even though he used a very foul word to describe somebody in the media at a campaign stop in Pennsylvania, stating, well, he just does that to kind of goad the press, to get a rise out of them. Let's just say for a moment, that's absolutely correct. Jerry Falwell Jr. being interviewed, defending the president, basically saying, look, that's the past, and in Christianity, we're forgiven for those things, so nothing to see here, folks. And let's just say that he's totally correct about that. Won't even argue those things. An article from the Washington Post and the Atlantic, Michael Gerson, perhaps you know his name. He was a speechwriter for George W. Bush, the two. He also is a Wheaton College graduate. He worked at Prison Fellowship Ministries. He calls himself an evangelical. I suspect from the lengthier article in the Atlantic, he is an old earth sort of fellow. He also thinks that we Christians we've just been a little bit too rigid on the whole marriage issue. That gives you, I think it's fair that you've got a sense of who Michael Gerson is as a professing evangelical. Now, that's full disclosure. Headline, Trump evangelicals have sold their souls. This is not a screed against Trump. This is not a complaint that you shouldn't vote, be involved in politics if you so choose. I think we need to ask ourselves a question at this time. And I think that this is, if we care about the gospel more than we care about politics, and I will trust we all do, then we need to ask the question, all right, what's going on here? What's happening? Whether it is fair or not, here's the way it tends to work in our culture. Even though evangelicals are not a monolithic people group, not everybody's the same. I'm way different than Michael Gerson, for instance. Very broad, different opinions on political issues, whether to vote for Trump or not. People go plugging their nose, other people saying, I just can't do it, other people being enthusiastic. A few people are able to get on the press, and I'm just saying their names, not to throw anybody under the bus, but Robert Jeffress and Mike Huckabee and Jerry Falwell Jr., I think maybe Tony Perkins, too, from the Family Research Council, they get on the news, and they defend Donald Trump, and then we all are defending Donald Trump and his actions. And with that, right now, comes the claim that we evangelicals have basically sold our birthright for a bowl of pottage. That's the accusation. And I think we would do well to consider it. And please, if you're getting hot and bothered right now because, hey, you could be undermining the presidency. I'm not talking about the presidency. I'm not. Frankly, I'm just not that interested. That's not the point of this at all. I am interested. I am concerned for the gospel and for God's Son receiving glory by saving sinners. And if there is something going on in culture that is happening, whether I am privy to it, I'm a party to it or not, I care because I should now try to figure out what do I do about this. It seems to me right now, based on these articles, Juan Williams, Michael Gerson, the talk that's going on CNS, I see it at the gym on the TV monitors. They're talking about evangelicals and Donald Trump. Why are they defending them? Have they sold their souls? I think we should all care about this more than politics, shouldn't we? This from Michael Gerson. With their reactions to the Roy Moore candidacy, sorry, I'm getting a little weary from these caveats, but I know that they're necessary. Hey, what Roy Moore was better than the other guy, and Roy Moore, he was sabotaged, and he didn't, and took a lie detector. Not talking about any of that. I'm not even talking necessarily about reality. I'm talking about perception. With their reactions to the Roy Moore candidacy and Stormy Daniels, the Trump evangelicals have scaled the heights of hypocrisy to the summit. Family values conservatives who dismiss credible accusations of sexual abuse and wink at hush money for a porn star have ceased to represent the family values in any meaningful sense. They made a national joke of moral standards that were once presumably deeply held, at least when a Democrat violated them. I know there's a difference. It's not the point. He writes, Trump evangelicals defend their support for the president in the pose of political realists. A president, they argue, is not a pastor. A certain amount of compromise is necessary to get conservative judges and more favorable treatment of Christian institutions. That's the way of the world. I think his observations are reasonable. He doesn't sound like a wild-eyed fanatic. I think he's a guy that happens to be observing what's happening, and I think anybody who would hear an individual say one thing about one fellow and something completely different about another fellow he prefers who did the very same thing could rightly be considered somebody who's not being at least consistent, if not downright hypocritical. More from the article. There are sometimes conflicted political choices in a fallen world, but this argument would be more credible if so many Trump evangelicals were not such sycophants. It is one thing to point to difficult binary choice between Trump and Hillary Clinton. It is another to provide Trump political cover in every scandal and offer preemptive absolution of every character failure. I think he stumbled onto the issue. And I think he also stumbled onto what we should do in response to this. How do you and I talk about it at the water cooler? Forget it. You and I aren't going on Fox News anytime soon. CNN, they're not asking us. Washington Post didn't ask for our opinion. But we'll get to give it at the water cooler. And if we can learn anything from this, when people hear us in any way, shape, or form, right, wrong, or indifferent, defend something about Donald Trump, even if it's absolutely right, you know what they're hearing? Hypocrite. Hypocrite, water carrier. Yeah, you and your family values. Yeah, right. Abortion. Sure. I'll bet if Donald Trump had an abortion, you'd change your tune on that too. Wouldn't you? And so I think we all need to be very mindful and very careful how we talk about this issue with our friends, with the people that we're trying to win, because we don't want to put up a stumbling block. Now, if right now, and this caveat is actually going to have a response to it. If right now you're going, but these things are what happens if Hillary gets in next time? And what happens if we lose our rights? And what happens if the Supreme Court goes in the opposite direction? I would ask you, and what happens if people hate Jesus or refuse to hear the gospel because we have put up a political stumbling block? What if? I mean, that's basically the premise of this dialogue, isn't it? What if? Well, what if? What if somebody who hates Donald Trump so much, you're talking about Donald Trump and trying to defend the actions, right, wrong, or indifferent, and then you try to witness to them, and they're like, No, thanks, man. Yeah, right. You evangelicals. You can just, would I consider myself to be a good person? Would you consider Donald Trump to be a good person? And you get nowhere because of it, because of the attitude is that we are so closely aligned with somebody who is so vilified that we can't preach the gospel to them, and they aren't willing to listen because we've put Donald Trump cotton balls into their ears. I'm not sure that illustration was perfect, but you get my point. What do we learn from this? I think if we learn nothing, we've missed the boat. I think if we aren't even willing to consider it because, okay, skinny boy in the powder blue sweater's going all liberal. If that's our response to it, I don't think we're being as gentle as doves and wise as serpents. This is Wretched Radio. Shout out to our gospel partners. It is your ongoing monthly support that allows us to do Wretched Radio every single day and provide the broadcast, the entire program, for free to anybody on iTunes, Android, or at our website. Thank you for being a gospel partner. If you enjoy or benefit from Wretched Radio, would you please consider joining those partners so that we can continue to preach the gospel? Simply visit wretched.org.